Welcome to Southern Soul Chats, where this season we will be diving into the stories of individuals who have navigated the deeper waters of faith. I'm your host, Dr. Miranda Ferguson, and together we'll explore the journeys of people who've taken that courageous step forward in their faith. Get ready to be inspired as we uncover the incredible stories of unwavering belief and the remarkable impact it's had. If you're excited to join us on this faith-filled exploration, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Let's step forward. Hey y'all, we're so glad to have you here today. Once again, I'm on a field trip and I get to be in the beautiful state of Tennessee, close to the Nashville area. So I'm super excited to be out of my office to be podcasting today. We have a great story today with Adrienne and Colin. Their story discusses themes of body image struggles, addiction, marital challenges, and redemption through faith. And this story is going to highlight the journey from struggle to healing and the important role of faith in their lives and especially in their marriage. So listeners, I believe that today's episode is going to be a powerful and transformative story of overcoming personal struggles, challenges, and just finding grace and mercy and faith and holding on to faith within those things, which I think we can all relate to. So let's just get into it and welcome Colin and Adrienne Dyer. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me in your space and allowing me to come out this way and be here. I've been to Nashville a few times recently in the last few years, and it's a beautiful place to be. Lots of trees and green, and you don't see that a whole lot in Houston.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah, I know why.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely know why. And it's a rainy day, but it's still beautiful in a rainy little dreary day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so
it's cozy.
In Houston, it's not beautiful. Rainy and dreary day. It's like, it's a rainy and dreary day. Mm-hmm. But it's still beautiful. And I love that. I love getting to see new places and meet new people. So thank y'all for having me. And again, thank you for being here. So we're going to get into it. And we're going to start with letting you guys tell everybody individually a little bit about who you are. You can share what you want to share and a little bit about like how you grew up. And then we'll talk about how you got together, and we're going to do this thing.
Sounds good.
We are.
So how about we'll say ladies first?
All right.
So you knock it out.
Cool. Hey, everyone. My name is Adrienne Dyer. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I grew up in a faith-based family. My parents are super involved in church from day one of my life, pretty much. And I can remember when I was almost 4 years old running into the bathroom and telling my mom, like, I believe in Jesus while she was on the toilet, you know? So it was one of those
That's
things
a story you
where,
wouldn't forget.
No.
As a mom or a child.
I have this vivid memory, and I don't know if it's 100% correct, but that's how I remember it. And so I've always been involved in church. I've always believed myself to be a Christian. Of course, you have those times where you're like, you question things. You're like, is this real? Do I really believe this? But all throughout my life, God has been incredibly gracious to continue to affirm my faith and everything. And I've been involved whether I wanted to or not because my parents forced me to go. Me and all my siblings were involved in church from day one. So great. Like we had an incredible church growing up. Still love my home church, Faith Bible Church in Cincinnati. And my parents still go there. My grandparents were part of the founding members of the church. So it's like it was a generational church for my family, still is. And I grew up like that, super blessed. So,
Do you come from a big family?
Yeah, my dad is one of 5. I'm one of 5. Mom's one of 3. So, and then we have lots of cousins and stuff like that. So it's definitely bigger than Colin's family.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy because I lean more towards like your family dynamic, Colin, because my mom was one of 6.
Oh gosh.
But then like I was an only child until I was 15.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had some other siblings from divorce situation, but as far as in-house, so I like ruled the roost until 15. So I have a lot of only child syndrome.
Well, I definitely ruled the roost. My siblings called me the bossy queen growing up. So
Are you the oldest?
I am.
is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's that first child. I don't care if you're an only child or not. It's that first kid syndrome.
It is. Well, I mean, we're all crazy. So, you know, when mom put me in charge, and I took charge plenty of times too when I wasn't supposed to, but you know, you got to corral all of them. They're crazy.
It's like herding cats.
Yeah. But no.
Especially her siblings. 100%.
I think a lot of people say that about their siblings in general. So,
but to clarify, I absolutely love my family. What grateful that my parents raised us the way we did. So we're all super close, and yeah, it was the best. I really can't. There's nothing to complain about.
So what about your family, Colin? Let's hear it. Give us the dirt, all the dirt.
Spill the tea.
All of it. Just dump it on the table.
Yep, exactly. So hi, everybody. I'm Colin Dyer. And I also grew up in a family that was rooted in faith. I was born in Missouri, in a small town in the Boot Heel, Missouri. I don't remember as much because I'm the youngest of three in my family.
Have the baby and the oldest. Oh, what a dynamic.
So being the youngest, we left Missouri when I was 5. So I don't have a ton of memories like my brother and my sister do. My brother being the oldest, my sister being the middle. So they have more memories there, but I grew up in Cincinnati. So that's when we all moved there. So I have much more fond memories of growing up in Cincinnati, which is, where I met Adrienne. But, I mean, I don't ever remember a time where church wasn't like one of the primary activities we did as a family.
Right.
Even in Missouri, like I have very limited memories of any of the houses. And we lived in like 3 houses in that time that we lived in Missouri. I don't remember any of those houses. But I remember First Baptist Church, Cape Girardeau. Like, I remember.
I don't remember where I slept at night, but boy, I remember the pew on the 3rd row in the second section of the church.
It's actually, we were like 4th or 5th on the right side. Yeah.
The sad thing is as you're saying that, I'm having a very vivid image from my childhood of exactly where our family sat.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What pew.
Yep.
I mean, I know First Baptist Church Chickasaw.
Mm-hmm.
I got it down.
Oh, yeah. We had our space too, and like we would fill the entire row, and we extra fill the rows now with all of our spouses and everything. But like we sit in a different part of the sanctuary, and I'm like, this isn't where we grew up.
This is not our spot.
You're like, I fear change. But so Cincinnati, then like it was the same thing. We found a different Baptist church in Cincinnati, and we had our established pew. It was the 3rd row on the left side in Cincinnati.
The Dyer pew.
We did. We swapped sides. But Mom always taught Sunday school. Dad always taught Sunday school, and then taught youth as well. So that was what I had as an example. Is like we did youth group. We did Sunday night. We did Wednesday night. I mean, you were just at church all week, basically. And then Mom was, doing stuff, decorating around the church. So it's like, whether I wanted to be at church or not, I was probably at church.
Yeah, that's the same. This is the same for me. But, I'm sitting here thinking because I know a little bit more about Colin, y'all, to be fair. I know just a little more about his family and his dynamic. I don't know as much about I know you connected to the Dyer. But what's funny is as I'm sitting here thinking, I think this is amazing. All 3 of us were in church literally like soaked. Literally. We were soaked in church and we had no choice, y'all. Seriously, like we were drugged there, whether you wanted to be there or not. Yep. Which is not a bad thing. No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But foundationally, I'm looking at all 3 of us and like, I know me and I've read what you wrote and I know you about you from the connection I have. And so what's cool about that in this moment is I'm going, wow, like foundationally how important that really is.
Yeah.
Because as we move through this story and you start telling it, like if that foundation wasn't there,
it'd be so
this
different.
Story would have a completely different ending.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like I should have told my mom how sorry I am
for all the times I complained.
I was about why do we have to be there on Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, and Sunday? Like, do we have a house?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we live here? But foundationally, it's so important. And another thing about this that I think is really cool is I think through this story, it'd be easy for a listener to say, especially a listener that's maybe not a believer, to go, well, y'all were Christian and it was easy for you. Mm-hmm. No, you're about to hear a story where just being a Christian didn't cover the things life was going to throw at you. But again, foundationally, being the Christian gave you something to hold on to because you guys had a lot of options you could have chose. Yeah. And so I want people to realize going into this is that being a Christian does not give you like this pass of this great life. We still have to walk through things. We still do walk through things like everybody else. We make good choices. Some of us, my hand is raised at the moment, make bad choices. Lots of them. But God is so good to have laid a foundation. How fortunate we are, 3 are, that we had a foundation. Yeah. That even in the depths of like my trash and crap, that I knew where to go back to.
Yeah.
And it didn't, there were always consequences. There were lots of consequences in my life. I could look back and start naming them all, but God has taken all of them and still made a garden of beautiful. And I so don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when we get into it, I just don't want people going, oh, well, of course you knew how to do it. No. Like, following Jesus is not a path to life not happening.
No.
And you're going to see that in this story. Like, life happened with people who were just so embedded into church their whole life. It didn't guard them. It didn't guard me. It's not going to guard anybody. But what it did do was give you a solid foundation. And I'm just in this moment so thankful for that. So thanks to my mom.
Yeah.
Like, in a word. I'd like to thank my mother and the preacher and all those people I complained about going to church.
Right. Yeah.
Because without that, I think my story would be really different. And it's bad enough as it is. So I don't know. Like, the worst is a little scary. Yeah. Okay, so great. So now we know individually where you're raised and the foundation that was set. So what about let's start with you, Adrienne, like in your teenage years leading up to meeting Colin, because you guys have been together for
almost 18 years
Almost
now.
18 years now.
y'all. That's a long time.
It is. Both grateful for it and at the same time like, oh my gosh, how did that happen?
It's rare.
Yeah.
It's
we were
rare.
Babies. We were babies.
But it's so rare now. Like, I feel like my, like maybe parents, like let's say our ages, like I'm in my mid 40s, right? So like my parents' age and grandparents, like that was not rare to be in long standing relationships.
Yeah.
But y'all, like I could add up the times I've been married and get close to that number because unfortunately it's more like that now.
Yeah.
Like you don't really meet people who came out of a certain stage in their life and went, we're going to get married and we're still married.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we did get married, but now I'm with wife 3.
Yeah.
That just didn't work real well. So kudos to you guys. That's amazing. And
It's
I love
all
it.
God, though.
It is all God.
It is all God. Yep. Despite our best efforts.
Despite everything
ruin
we
it.
tried, we are still here
Yeah.
today. And we're going to do 18 more. You watch and see. So let's back up because since you have been together so long and you were young, let's go back to kind of who Adrienne was before then. And then feel free, Colin, while she's telling the story of kind of who you were as a young adolescent before you met her. But we're ladies first always on here.
Always.
It's the Southern thing to do.
Of course.
So I'm going to just give it to you and let you take off.
Cool. Let's see. I hated school, first of all. I was really awkward and shy and just did not know how to talk to people. I second guessed everything. I mean, I was just really in my head growing up about how do I talk to people? And, so of course I would come off awkward and it was just, but so I grew up like I had a small group of friends, but I always wanted to be like the popular girl and cute and all this kind of stuff. But that just wasn't my story. Let's see. I definitely developed a kind of like boy crazy, like loving attention if I ever got it type of thing, but I was also a perfectionist. So I tried my best to present the best of me, but at the same time questioned everything. So I had a lot of insecurity issues growing up. And I'm trying to think like freshman and sophomore year, because I met Colin my junior year. He was a sophomore. And he was definitely more outgoing, more popular,
we
like
could not have had more different high school experiences.
Oh, it's like that
loved
opposite attract
literally. And I
She
remember
said he loved school.
he did. And I did really, really well at school, straight A's, because I was perfectionist. I would accept nothing less, except for the fact that I hated it. Whereas he was like, I don't care. And he got whatever grades, he got good grades, but he didn't really care. And he liked school.
I didn't love school for the academic aspect. I like learning. I love learning.
He loved learning, but he could have cared less about his grades.
But being the third child, like I was the social butterfly.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
You went to school for the party.
He did, but he was fun and outgoing and he could talk to anybody. And I was like, but the year that I met him though, the summer before, I had kind of started coming out of my shell. And so suddenly I was able to talk to more people. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is how you make friends. You just you don't care as much about how people perceive you or all these things. So that was actually funny that the year that I kind of came out of my shell is the year that I met him.
Almost like just divine.
Right. And I had even said the summer before, like, okay, Lord, I'm just going to enjoy school now. I'm not going to overthink everything. I'm not going to be super awkward and shy and just like want everyone to like me and all this kind of stuff. Just whatever. That's not me. It's actually not me. At home, I'm a totally different person. So I was like, I'm just going to go to school. I'm going to have, fun with the friends that I do have. I'm not going to try to always like be popular, like look like the popular girls, whatever. I'm just going to be content. I'm going to try to be content. And still boy crazy, but I was like, all right, Lord, I'll lay that down. I will not date till college. And then literally a couple months later met Colin. So
My Colin.
literally.
My Colin. That's
it
so
just worked
sweet.
out. But that was kind of, I'm trying to like keep it in a nutshell. It was like me in a nutshell. I was a perfectionist, desperately wanting to be popular and get attention from guys, but at the same time also understanding like, all right, Lord, like maybe I'll focus on you and not boys and not school. Like maybe I'll, try to do the Christian thing that I've been taught my whole life, right?
Right.
Because I was in high school, I was at the point where I was learning that I needed to make my faith my own. And so that was becoming more important to me. And it wasn't just because my parents were dragging me to church 5 times a week. It was because it was like I was owning it. And I was like, you know what? This is the path I want to take in life. So I was trying to, all right, Lord, I'm done with boys. I'll focus on you. And then
And poof.
lo and behold, met a boy.
It says when you chase Jesus,
Right, exactly.
he brings along the rest. So
Yeah.
you guys meet. So did you like just bump into each other at high school? Because if you're a junior and he's younger, then
Yep.
I'm guessing you.
I thought he was older though. Like I thought he was a senior when we met because
I still don't know how she thought I was older, but she did.
well, he was definitely a lot more mature than most of the guys in my grade, which is another reason why I was like, I'm not going to date anymore because there's like no one worth my time, frankly.
It's high school.
Literally. But
High school
like,
brain.
Yeah.
So I met him and he was just like, he just felt more mature. His artwork, first of all, like I was super jealous of his artwork and it looked like an artwork from someone who was much older, right? Because he was just so much more advanced than pretty much anyone in our art class. But we had an art class together where there was like, I think there were some sophomores in it too. It's just a combination of grades.
Because like once you get out of that freshman year, at least where we grew up in the high school we were at, like once you get out of freshman class, like any of your art electives, you're now mixed with the rest of the school. So
Yeah.
sophomore to senior, you can be mixed in. So
Yeah.
like for art 2, 3, 4 AP, it's all ages.
And
Basically.
I failed to mention that I'm sitting with 2 uber talented people. I completely just didn't even mention that part. That like, don't ask me to draw anything at this table or create anything today. I just completely just didn't mention that part.
Yeah, it is
Uber
ironic.
talented.
We're both in art fields and we met in art class. So,
How
just,
appropriate.
I know. It's
a little
like
poetic.
it's disgustingly cute.
yeah, it is. We've always been like, ugh, our story is one of those. It's like, ugh, no
Yeah.
thanks.
It's like a hallmark.
Literally.
How cute.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So he was in art class with me. Again, like I told you, like I saw his portfolio. He could just draw from his head. I had to really concentrate. And so I was like, I'm so jealous of his artwork. I hate that kid. I'm not going to talk to him because I don't want to compare artwork. Like that was like the first thing in my head as soon as I saw his portfolio, and his reaction day one was completely different.
Oh yeah. My reaction to her was vastly different than her reaction to me.
So she's worried about a portfolio over
I'm
here.
competitive and
Yeah.
I'm thinking absolutely not because
Yeah.
he's way better. So I'm not talking to him.
And what were you thinking, Colin?
I was like, this girl. Wow.
I love that. Colin's like, oh, wow. And you're like, no way, not going to happen.
Nope.
Yep.
I
Adrienne
had
says
written
no.
him off immediately
My-
as soon as I saw his work.
My dad loved to tell this story. He told it at our rehearsal dinner too. That he's like, I remember when Colin came home from that day at school, because it was specifically, we were drawing. It was like one of the first days. And so nobody was really talking. You don't really know anybody because you're now all mixed together with different grades. And so our teacher made us do blind gestures and stuff like that. And so you had to have a couple students like sit up on the desks so that you could sit and draw them. And Adrienne volunteered, and I didn't know her. And so she sat up there and we drew her, and like that was when I noticed her, and I was like, wow. And I came home and I told Dad, I was like, Dad, there's this girl in my art class. And so that was my reaction. Meanwhile, Adrienne goes home to her dad, and she's like, Dad, there's this stupid boy in my class. I hate him.
I'm going to marry him, but I don't know it yet.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny that one of you go home smitten and the
Yep.
other one's going home like, not. I don't even want to breathe the same air.
I was pissed because I was just like that. I was so, well, and this was me being prideful. I was like really proud of my artwork because I was like one of the best artists in my little like group of friends, right? So I was like really proud of myself. And then I see his stuff and I was like, all right.
Yeah, I just got knocked
That was
off
a
at the top
humble-
level. That's
Yeah.
great.
Humble slice of
And
pie,
I was-
and I did not
I
handle
was
it well.
blissfully naive to her contempt for me.
So so you're in class and clearly we got past that
Yes.
moment. Clearly
Yes, we
you were
did.
able to lay that down.
Yes.
Because, so what did art force you to have to work together or talk? Or?
It did, yes.
Eventually,
but
yeah.
there was this kid so my last name was Mary, Mary, Adrienne Mary. And so this kid he was sitting next to Colin, and Colin and him were sitting in front of me and my friend, and he kept calling me Mary. Like, what's up, Mary? What's up? What's up? And Colin turns around, he goes, her name's Adrienne Jeff. And I was offended. I was like, who are you? Like, why do you know my name? Ugh. Whatever. Like I was like actually offended by the fact that he like stood up for me, I guess. I don't even know. But I was just like, ew, why do you know my name? But that was like my first interaction with him. And then like we got assigned, you were out or I was out one day sick or something like that. And we had to have a partner assignment. And, oh no, maybe it was me because you said I can hang back and I'll partner with Adrienne when she comes back or something like
Oh,
that.
smart, Colin.
Or something like that.
It was a big brain move.
He's got all the brains
He
and
did.
skills.
And so like, but by that time we'd had a couple like interactions. So I wasn't quite as like cold shoulder to him. I still thought you were older. I thought he was a senior and I was a junior. So when I found out he was a sophomore, I was like, oh wait, I don't know if I'm interested now because he's so much younger.
Now you're a baby.
Right.
Yep.
You
But-
fell off your platform. Gosh, it took you forever to get there. You
I
just
know.
clunked down.
And I didn't even know I fought to get there.
But yeah, so like it was like a project where we had to like take really dramatic lit pictures of each other and then create like a realistic portrait, right?
Yeah.
So we actually had to go into a closet together to create this like super dramatic lit photo. And we were like in there, like the entire class just like laughing and talking. And I was like, this is weird. This kid's not bad.
I'm stuck in a closet with you now.
Yeah.
I think you're okay. You're
So-
good.
Yep. Meanwhile, I'm like, I'm in a closet with a girl.
That's so funny. Like, how did this happen to me today? I was art class. I have to know this. At this particular in sophomore year was art class. Like, could you not wait to get into art class every day? Like, were you
Yeah.
just waiting to get into art? Like, I cannot get me to art. Get me to art class now.
If I remember, it was like our first class of the day, too.
Yeah. Yeah, it was in the morning before
Yeah.
lunch.
So it was like one of the first classes of the day. So I was like, bam.
So
start
he
off
like
strong.
jumps up now to get dressed in the morning, hurries to school, can't wait to be there.
I
all the
still
while
hate
not,
it.
all the while not knowing that she's like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah, don't talk to me.
Slowly wearing her down.
so
You
I guess
did.
I'm guessing you date through high school. So now, like, she slowly wore you down.
Yeah, it was only actually a few months. Like I remember it being longer just because I was so against it initially, but it was only a few months. And then he asked me out in October,
Yeah,
right?
October.
So we only knew each other for like 2.5 months, 3 months.
In school years, that's like years.
Oh, it is.
It's true.
Forever.
Because you spend every day together.
Because the school year started at the end of August. So then we like talked at the end of September.
Yeah.
And then October
that's right, yeah.
was your birthday. And
I
came
invited him
your-
over.
Yeah.
I had an airsoft party. I invited him over. He comes over in full camo,
Meanwhile,
fully
yeah.
decked out.
Me and my friends were doing like milsurp, airsoft. Like we were
Oh my gosh.
full send into
We
it.
had like basic airsoft Nerf gun type of situations, and he comes fully
Combat man.
Yep.
literally, and he had multiple guns and all this kind of
Yep.
stuff. And this was like I had already told my parents like this is the guy that I'm kind of interested in, and they were like, "This is the guy."
I show up in full Vietnam period accurate special forces.
Well, at least they knew you'd be well protected.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the reasons why I was interested in him because I grew up. My dad took us shooting, hunting, all that kind of stuff, and I heard him talking about guns one day at an art class, and I was like, "Oh, he shoots. I shoot. That's interesting." Okay, and I'd already heard him say something about like going to church and like being a believer.
So you're like piecing some things together
Literally,
in your
yeah.
brain.
So I was like, oh, he's a Christian guy who shoots. Fascinating. All right.
Well, and I also and I played sports too. So
Yeah.
like playing like in Cincinnati, at least in Loveland where we grew up, like athletics were a really big thing. And you know, it's Ohio and it's football. So that's what I played. And
Yeah.
so that was a big deal. And so I was on the football team and I was in this art class with her and I was a Christian and
There was
I
a lot of check
shot.
boxes.
Yeah.
Lots
It was,
of positives.
it was all just working out.
The
was.
only thing I wasn't was tall, dark, and handsome.
That's what because I always like in my head, I thought that was my type. Like I was like, if I have a type, because I didn't.
Isn't that every girl's type in high school though?
Right.
I'm just asking.
I mean, yeah, like because that's like literally my family is all like over 6 foot.
Oh yeah,
you know?
she comes from a family of Amazons.
I'm short for my family.
Yeah.
Me and my sister are short in our family. But like, so I just kind of assumed that's
Yeah.
my type. That's the kind of guy that I'm going to end up with.
That's my people.
Right. Like that's what my family's like. So I met him and he was completely off my radar
In all kinds of ways.
in so many ways, but God made it work.
So you go through high school and then let's just be honest, you know, most people past high school and they go to college because you're coming out first because you're older.
Yep.
So most people, that's when it kind of fizzles out.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
even if you just love them to death and you just eat them up and can't chew them and can't spit them out, the end of high school is usually a pivotal moment because somebody's going away to college, maybe, or somebody's moving. Like that's when real life kind of kicks in.
Yeah.
So clearly. So when high school happened, when you graduated from high school, he's got another year to go. So where did you go and how did y'all navigate through that?
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
an interesting scenario because of
was.
that. So Adrienne went to the University of Cincinnati, and so
So it was
that
only
was
like 30
about
minutes
30 minutes
away.
away. So during that whole year, she would come home on the weekends. So
I'd
I
go
would
to
still
his
see
football
her.
games
Yeah.
on Fridays and stuff like that.
Right. So I would still see her on the weekends. I just wouldn't see her throughout the week. And so
Right.
we
But
kind of got used
occasionally
to
you came down to visit.
right every now and then
Yeah.
because it's close enough that I could go down there. We could have dinner. I could like look around the campus with her a little bit, and then I could drive back home, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal because
Yeah.
it's a 25-minute drive.
Did
Yeah.
you stay close because of him or was that always
No.
what you were going to do?
So the University of Cincinnati had an incredible art program. It was like top in the country, design, architecture, and art.
And planning.
UC DAP, design, architecture, art, and planning. And I went for graphic design. And so like I kind of actually only ever had one plan. My plan was to go to UC and to get into DAP, even
Yeah.
though it was like really hard. A bunch of people told me, "Oh, don't
Yeah,
don't
don't put all
plan
your
on
eggs in
getting
that
in."
basket.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did apply to a couple other schools, and I applied to the school I knew he was going to because he had his heart set on this school from like sophomore year.
Yeah, I had no junior year where I was going to SCAD.
Yeah. So Savannah, all the way down in Georgia. So I applied there and I got in, but I didn't really want to go there.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like
A
I
backup
knew
plan.
It was, but I wasn't even sure how I was going to use that backup plan. Like even if I didn't get into UC, but I did get into UC. So the Lord took care of the fact that I did not make any other plans really.
Yeah, which I mean, the program she got into is based on like academic merit. It's not
Yeah,
on like
yeah.
visual portfolio, so that's why it's super hard to get into because as artists, like generally not the greatest with grades. So,
But I was a perfectionist with my grades.
Right.
So like that helped me out, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do like I was a local student too, so I think that also helps. But I did get in. So I'd always planned to go there. That was my dad's alma mater. One of my brothers ended up going there too. But yeah, that was always just kind of the plan. Had nothing to do with him.
Yeah. So you're year one into college, you're
Yep.
finishing senior year. And then now here's the next pivotal moment. You're a year in, so it's not like you're moving out.
Right.
Not your headspace is probably not like, oh, I'm going to leave here and do something else. But now it's your turn.
yep.
So here comes your senior year. What do you do? What did you pick?
So I had I knew like I had two schools. Those are the only two schools I was going to go to. It was either going to be the School of Visual Arts up in Manhattan with a major in cartooning, or I was going to go to the Savannah College of Art and Design down in Savannah, Georgia, and major in sequential art. Those were my only two places. I had no other. I mean, I went to other schools and I got accepted by other schools, but they weren't options. Like
Right.
Columbus was an idea because my siblings have been at Ohio State. And so Columbus has Columbus College of Art and Design. So I toured that place. They had an illustration program, considered it because I was like, well, it'd be easy for, mom and dad, if they came up to Columbus and all 3 of their kids are at school in Columbus.
Look at you being so thoughtful.
But then I was just like, we went, and my dad and I visited SCAD for an accepted students day thing. And I was like, this is it. I was like, this is the place. And so that junior year, like, I already knew. And I had talked with their lacrosse team and their coach. And so I had talked with them for the possibility of going down there on an athletic scholarship and playing lacrosse for SCAD. And I was like, who would have thought I could play lacrosse at an art school? And so they gave me a verbal scholarship of like, yeah, you'll be on the team and we can give you a scholarship. It's funny how the Lord worked it though, because I ended up that junior year blowing out my knee, and
Need that for lacrosse.
Yeah.
I did. And because it was a dual injury from football and lacrosse, so it like started from football and it was made worse from lacrosse. And so I had the surgery that ended my season, which is crazy because we went to the state championship that year. But that, little did I know, was the last lacrosse game I'd ever play. Was the day before my knee surgery. So
our prom pictures have him on crutches and everything.
Yep.
That's how memories are made, guys.
Yep.
Yep. Dancing between crutches at a prom.
Yeah.
Doing the
That
best
was
you
cute.
can. Still just trying to make it work.
Yeah. So anyway, like, long story short, I knew SCAD was going to be where I went, and that's where I had decided. So we had I had a late start. SCAD didn't start till mid-September or something like that. So we had all that summer together, and then she had to go back to school as I was preparing. But we kind of used like that my senior year and her first year at UC as like a good
test
trial run to be like,
To
I
see
don't
if
see
it's
you
gonna
every
work.
day.
Yeah.
Can we still communicate and like understand how to like talk and text each other continuously? And so we're like, okay, like we did the trial run. Now we're gonna do like, now I'm not gonna see you for 3 months.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna go 12 hours south and I'm not gonna see you for 3 months.
Yeah.
So did you like say that to each other, like, okay, if this don't work, like in 3 months, if we just, we're done?
We didn't ever really talk about it. We just kind of like, I was trying to think, did we ever talk about, do we need to break up? And I know a lot of people told me like, oh, are you guys going to break up? Like, because you're going to be long distance. Like, why would you stay together? Don't you want to like
See each other?
explore? Like,
Yeah.
we'll see
don't
each
you
see
wanna-
other
or, like,
people?
Yeah,
yeah,
don't you want to date
exactly.
somebody that's closer to you?
Yeah.
Right. And so like it was never really a discussion. It was just kind of like, I like you, you like me. We've been together for 2 years now, and it's 3 years at that point. It's like there wasn't really this idea that we needed to break up for any reason.
Right.
And I think we might have like lightly touched on the topic, like I was, a little jealous of the fact that there were like other girls down there, or whatever the case was,
Right.
and I wouldn't know or anything, all the typical feelings.
Normal.
but-
That's the normal
Yeah.
things.
Right. Yeah. But other than that, it was this idea that I really liked him. We had a solid foundation for a relationship from high school, and we were just going to see what happened.
Yeah.
So clearly, did you get married before both of y'all got out of college?
No, we
No.
got married as soon as we graduated.
Right.
So you graduated first?
No.
No, this
No.
is the hilarious part. So she was a 5-year program.
Yeah.
And I was just normal 4 years. However, I, with an AP credit, and then I did an independent study, and I did a trip to Japan that all equaled 3 credits, which was a quarter's worth of credits. I got to graduate early.
Yeah.
So I
So I
went
was in
into
school
college
so much
after her,
longer.
and I graduated before she did.
So he graduates first.
Yes.
Yep.
Then you graduate.
Yep.
And then we get married.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, look at
Yep.
that. Okay, so then that's all y'all are going to hear about this because we're going to get now into like the real good part of the story that we've been dancing around, because the marriage still plays into this
Yes.
story so much. So we're going to fill in some blanks, but I just wanted everybody to know, here's how they met. Here's when they got married. And now we're going to go slap in some good stuff.
Yep.
Or I don't
All the
mean
other
good. Yeah,
things.
we're going to put in life. We're going to enter life. Okay. So, but come and say this. Kudos to y'all for making that work, because that's pretty impressive.
Well, it's
and
definitely God.
I will say also too, like as like with regards to like family, I also did have like a good example. My sister and her husband, they started dating in high school. They both went to 2 different schools and dated long distance. Like she was at Ohio State, he was at West Point. And so not only was he at West Point, but he wasn't even there in the summers because he was doing his Army training during the summers. So he and my sister had to write letters to each other. So like,
so
I
you
had a
knew it
good
could be
roadmap.
done.
Yeah. And my brother-in-law was very much, cause he was a senior when I was a freshman. He was very much a big influence in my life, like with the student ministry that we were in with our high school and stuff. So I looked up to him a lot. And so seeing like, oh, he can do this, like seeing him walk through it with my sister gave me confidence. Like, oh yeah, this is possible.
Yeah, it's not horrible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's never been done before.
Right.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, to that degree, like having that example paved before me was a good thing. Like, oh yeah, this isn't impossible.
Right.
And I'm also one of those people, once I commit to something, like I have to see it through kind of thing. Like I hate giving up or quitting, and
That it might be
But
a
that's just
part
me just
of
being
your
stubborn.
perfectionist thing we were talking about.
yeah, that's
Just a
gotten
little
me in trouble a few times, but it's worked out in this case.
Yeah, in this case, it paid off. Thank you. Okay, so so we're gonna rewind and go back to high school because you touched on several. I know you were trying to dance around it,
Yeah.
so we could get here. But you talked about some of the things like you didn't like school, but because you're a perfectionist. But so let's get into really what you were dealing with in high school. So, and I'll let you start that wherever you want to start it. But so we're gonna move into talking about real life now.
Yeah.
Because that we heard this great story.
Yep.
But we have some behind the scenes stuff that we got to talk about, which is the whole point of why we're here. So tell everybody during this story of you talking about you being shy and developing and your character developing to being more social, having those perfectionist tendencies. Tell us like the other things that you were also dealing with during that time in your life.
So I was just like super insecure. Always, like I said, I was always questioning like how my words were being received. Cause I would say things like I was awkward. So I would say things and then realize that it was perceived weird or whatever. And there was slight bullying instances, but nothing that's like, oh my gosh, it's like, kids laugh at kids. Right. And so, it was just one of those things where I realized that I was different or just like outcast simply because I couldn't communicate in such a way that just the other kids were like laughing and haha, and it was funny. And I just always I was so in my head that like everything I say is awkward, so I don't fit in. So I would just be quiet and sit there like a mouse and do my homework, and get perfect grades because I couldn't have friendships. And I also had glasses and braces, and I, was really awkward about my appearance too. I didn't know how to dress cute. I desperately wanted that. I wanted to feel confident in my own skin, but I just wasn't. There's a lot of like wearing hand-me-downs and clothes that didn't quite fit, but like also like I just didn't know how to dress myself, and so it was just one of those things where I felt awkward on the outside, I acted awkward on the inside, and so it was just like I just felt like maybe if I just sit in the corner here and read my books and do my homework, no one will look at me and laugh at me, and that's good enough for today, and it wasn't that bad, but you know how you build things up in your head. So I'm sure the other kids were just like, she's just a really quiet kid who never says anything. But if you ask her for her homework, because she's getting perfect grades, she'll give you the homework. So like, if someone asked me for my homework, I was like, oh, attention. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Have my homework.
Right.
Adrienne, come on now. But like, I did slowly start coming out of my shell. I was able to make a couple of really solid friends that I'm still friends with to this day. Just, but it was still like very like out on the outside of things. Like I played soccer with some of the girls that were, in my mind, prettier, more popular, knew how to interact with boys, and I like, which is hysterical because I had so many brothers and uncles. Like I knew how to interact with boys, but I was desperate for a guy to think I was cute. Yeah. And I didn't consider myself cute. So everything that came out of my mouth was just weird and awkward. And I don't know how to talk to a guy, which I did. But you question all those things. So I just developed a lot of insecurities, and I was like, if I can control the way that I appear, if I can control my clothes, if I can control everything that people see about me, then maybe I'll feel more confident. Right. Kind of like I could control how much time I spent studying. So I was confident when I went into the test, I'd get a good grade. It's kind of how I guess in my mind it was. So, that's kind of like where that came from, but it was just like just tons of insecurity. And then I remember distinctly, I was skiing at Perfect North with one of my friends, and I noticed this guy staring at me. And I was like, Ashley, what's on my face? Why is he looking at me? I was really concerned. I was like, crap, there's something weird that I'm wearing again. Like, I didn't check my appearance. Like, this guy's looking at me and it's like weird. And she's like, he's checking you out. And I was like, what?
Wait, is this happening
The
today?
thing that I've always dreamed of, like
happening.
being cute. And that really went to my head. So I went from being like, awkward and shy to realizing, gaining a little bit of confidence and realizing, oh, maybe I am not as awkward and weird as I thought I was. Maybe I am kind of cute. And so I did start noticing looks, and I did start noticing like I can talk to people if I just quit overthinking everything. And so suddenly I was getting more attention and everything, and that's what I'd always wanted. So I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what I've always wanted. I'm so happy. And it was great for a couple years. And, I think one of the reasons why the Lord gave me such a long-standing relationship, I like to think, is because when in the realization of like, I'm not as weird or ugly or whatever as I've always considered myself. And guys do find me attractive. Not every guy, but there's, people do find me attractive. And that's what I was desperate for. And so I feel like God gave me Colin so that I had a stable, solid relationship for, the rest of my life, because otherwise I would have been like boy crazy, oh my gosh, jumping from boy to boy and all these boyfriends and yay, me attention, so it was almost like that God gave me a grounding.
But at the same time, you still, even though you had a solid grounding, you still struggled.
Because I wanted to know, because it fulfilled that deepest need that I'd always had to be seen. And so I was so happy to be seen, and so happy to be seen and considered pretty and considered cute and all that kind of stuff. So even if I wasn't going to act on it, I still wanted it, and I still loved it. And eventually it got to the point where after I graduated from high school, I started noticing my body in a way that I'd never noticed it before. It just wasn't a thing in high school. I was just happy enough to wear clothes that I thought were kind of cute and on trend. And then in college, I started noticing the shape of my body. For whatever reason, that summer before I went into freshman year, I was like, I don't know if I like the way this is shaped, or and I don't know what triggered it. It was just kind of I started noticing physical things about myself that I was like, I don't like this. And then I started getting into the fashion world too, watching runway shows and stuff like that, and watching America's Next Top Model and all these things.
So are you maybe comparing, you think?
Oh my gosh,
Because let's all be honest, those girls on America's Top Model.
Oh, yeah.
Are they real?
Yeah.
Well, and it's they're
real?
1,000 times taller than me and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just but I started noticing those things. Before it was always I knew I wasn't cute because of the clothes that I wore. And then it was I started noticing body shape itself, because I had gotten to the point where I was able to control my makeup. I was able to control my clothes, and that equaled cute. And then all of a sudden I was realizing there's more to it. There's the physical aspect.
Yeah, for those clothes to fit or look the right way.
Look a certain way. Yeah. And I'm smaller, and I don't have curves or whatever. And I was desperate for that. And so I would wear multiple bras, just so ridiculous. But I was but I can control the way that then people perceive me, because I can look a certain way. So I was just starting to get into that more and more in college, and started realizing that if I exercised a lot and didn't eat as much, I could maybe control that more. And yeah, that's where it was just this overwhelming need to essentially control everything that people saw about me, so that there was never a negative. I wanted people to look at me, and it wasn't even about guy attention. It was about girls too. I wanted the girls to look at me and be like, oh, I want to be like her. She's so perfect. Look, her body's so perfect. Her hair, her makeup, it's all so perfect. And it just spiraled from there slowly.
Well, before we go into what it spiraled into, so at this point, you guys are a couple of years in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So did you start noticing, I'm not saying that men don't notice. I'm trying to be very polite.
Yeah.
I'm not saying men don't notice, but a lot of times they don't pick up on certain things, right? And but you're still she's going to go to college, but you're
so it was
still
my
around.
freshman year.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
still it's not like you've left and you don't know what's happening. So did you start noticing a shift or a change in what she was doing, or did it just seem normal that it was like, oh no, it's just everything's normal?
I'd say that the quickest thing that stood out to me was her food choices started getting different. Because like one of the things that I thought was really funny, especially like your 16-year-old boy or 17-year-old boy, and Adrienne was my first girlfriend, so I was one and done, like totally one and done.
Wow, that's it. We're done talking to you, Colin. Okay, Adrienne.
That's part of the part of our story.
That's it. You're done, Colin.
Yeah, it's part of the blah. But I was like, wow, this is cool. Like, I'm gonna go over to her house, and her dad, like, he shot a deer, and we're gonna have venison, and I'm gonna have and she's eating raw, like,
Yeah.
not raw, but rare,
Yeah.
Rare.
practically raw. And
We were big eaters.
yeah, and so like she I was like, and I played football, like I was a chunky kid, and so I'm like, I have a girlfriend that can eat as much as me, like,
This is wonderful.
and I was like, and she's super skinny. How crazy is this? Like, so I always thought that was just kind of like a weird novelty. And then like as I was finishing up high school, as she was preparing to go to UC, like I could see that she was exercising a little bit more, but I didn't
Because I was no longer playing soccer.
She wasn't playing soccer, so I just figured she's supplementing because she's not playing soccer anymore.
Yeah.
So now, she wants to exercise. That's fine. I get that. Like, we grew up as athletes, so like you want to do stuff. But then it was like her shifting from having like
Tons of
heavier
bread
meats and
and,
breads
yeah.
to like now she's having like only oatmeal and
salads.
apples or
A
salads.
piece of lettuce.
Yeah.
Literally.
And so it was transitioning to like all she would ever eat is salad, and I'm like, what happened to like the meat eater? Like,
Where's the carnivore?
yeah.
Literally. So that definitely affected. Yeah, I started lying about.
I was gonna say, did you ask? Like, did you ever say, "Hey, why are you eating a piece of lettuce?"
A lot of times, and it's interesting because I would
had
say
good
like,
excuses.
yeah, she
I
did
had
have
a
good
lot
excuses.
of excuses.
She would be like, oh,
I'm
I
not
just
super hungry.
I ate at home.
I'm
or
obsessed with salmon lately.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
or
eat at home whenever I leave here. So
They would invite me over
Yeah.
for dinner as usual, and I would be like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll totally come over." Oh, but I ate with my family early tonight, or something like that. So
Yeah.
like, I had a lot of excuses worked out so that whenever I was with people, I didn't really have to eat. And if I did, it was something that was like, "Oh, I'll just have a little bit of it because I'm really not that hungry," or whatever the case was. So
So
yeah.
really, you're still a little oblivious. Like, you don't. It just seems like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
He
like,
was kind of aware, but not.
fully.
Yeah.
Fully. So I know in your story you told me that it started with going to the gym a lot and shifting, but then you started experimenting with like more stuff.
Yeah. So the sophomore year, I started like it wasn't doing enough. Like I could like, and it's crazy how quickly it happened, how much you get into your head. And I'd already been in my head with like, all the things I was trying to control. So I guess it was just an easy path for me to go down. But I, like I would look in the mirror and be like, I don't like the way my arms are shaped today, or I don't like the way my legs are shaped today. And I like had really strong legs because I played soccer my entire life. Basically, it was my life. And so like I had really strong legs. When one of my friends made this comment, totally innocent, and I found out later it was because she actually really liked the shape of my legs and she was jealous. But what I heard was, "You're fat." And so like she was like, "Oh, thunder thighs," or something like that, because she was jealous that I had muscle or whatever. And I hear, because I was already starting to be aware of the fact that of my body shape, but I hear, "Your thighs are so huge." And so like that became a fixation point for me. And so like I was like, standing in different positions in the mirror and all this kind of stuff. And I just wasn't, I would not work out to gain weight, or I wouldn't work out to like muscle. I worked out just cardio. Like I want to
Just trying to burn it all.
Just trying to burn everything
Hours
that I ate that
cardio.
day. I would keep calculated in my head, and then I would try to run it off in the gym. Or, I'm walking to class on campus and everything freshman year. And so I was like, okay, well, if I walk here and I walk there and like all this kind of stuff, and if I'm at the gym for at least an hour, and I would like, again, more excuses. I'd be like, oh, well, I'm at the gym and I'm doing cardio, but it's not like I'm going that hard. Or like I would have a book and I'd be reading while I'm on the elliptical and I'd be like, oh, I just got stuck reading my book. Haha,
Right.
all these things to be like, Adrienne, it's not that bad. You just want to look a certain way. Why is that a bad thing? So it just, more and more fixated on different parts of my shapes of my body that I didn't like. And then sophomore year, I just like literally by that point, I was so deep into it that I looked in the mirror and saw someone that weighed 200 more pounds than I actually did. Like I couldn't physically, and that's when you get so in your head, you can't actually physically see yourself for the way you are.
Right. You see what your head's telling you.
Exactly.
You are.
What I wanted to see because I wanted to justify the actions I was taking. And so I realized like just the weird things you learn online, right? But like, I was like, oh, well, if I'm putting food in, because like I didn't ever want to do barfing it back up. Like that always just freaked me out. So I was like, well,
So you
what
had to
else
figure
can
out
I do?
another way to get it out.
Get it out, right? And so like, okay, well, I'm eating just a little bit, but what if I don't burn it all off that day? What if it's still stuck in me? And I'm like, laxatives. Oh, there we go. So I started abusing laxatives. So basically anything I put in my body, I felt safe knowing, okay, and immediately in a few hours before it has time to really absorb, I'll get it back out, you know, which caused all sorts of irritable bowel syndrome issues, which that was fun recovering from. But yeah, it was like that mental, you know, like if I can't get to the gym today and work out for 3+ hours or whatever, at least I'll have this.
I can just take those.
Yeah.
And it'll flush
like,
it all out.
Right. So it was like, I still wanted to go to the gym because I still had that athletic part of me that like, I like going to the gym and we do now, but it's totally different.
Yeah.
But like, I still had that athletic part of me that was like, I want to be fit, right? I want to be, you know, in a good shape. Even though I wasn't, you can run on the elliptical and not actually be in shape.
You can think you are, though.
Yeah, exactly.
You can think you are.
So, but my idea of in shape was just like, as long as I'm real thin, that's in shape. So yeah, anything to help me do that. So it was either lying about how much I'd eaten that day or getting it all out some way.
So at what point did you catch on? Like, was there something, or because now we're sophomore year, so now you're away, so it makes it a little more
It
convenient.
made it easier. It made it a lot easier to hide things.
Yeah.
Because people
I'd be
weren't
gone
with
for
me.
3 months at a time. And then it was like, it's hard too, because I mean, I would notice that she was skinnier, but I also hadn't seen her in 3 months. So I was just so happy to see her.
Yeah, I was like, well, it doesn't matter if you lost a pound or two. I'm just so glad to see you.
Right.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until like I probably towards the end of because the way the quarter system was where I went to school, I had a super long winter break. Like I had 10 weeks at school and then like 8 weeks of winter break. So we left before Thanksgiving, got back after New Year's. But then you had your winter and your spring quarter were almost butted up against each other. So it was almost 20 weeks straight. You had like a week for vacation. So it was like 21 weeks straight in Savannah. So I didn't see her for a really long stretch of time. And then it was like that summer I had noticed, I'm like, she is getting really skinny. But I grew up very much as like, I didn't really want to rock the boat. I didn't really understand how to do confrontation well.
Right.
I really always was very much like, I want things to just be smooth sailing. Like, let's just make things good and
Let's keep it happy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As long as she's happy.
And I guess that was
Right.
good for you, because if he's not addressing it, then you don't got to talk about it.
Exactly. I can pretend everything's fine.
yeah. And I can, in my mind, I'm like, man, I wish she wasn't as skinny as she is. But then I'm not going to say that because I'm like, I
What
don't want
man's going to say that?
Right. Right. I don't want to be
And
like,
live to tell about it.
I don't want to be
Right.
like, babe, you need to put on some weight. Like,
And like, it's funny because like those type of comments, like that was, instead of it being like a warning to me, which it should have been, comments about like, why aren't you eating? Or, you know, you're really thin, stuff like that. It was a compliment to me. It was like, it was
It would
an
reinforce that what you were
acknowledgement.
doing, what was working.
Yes, exactly. And so had he said something, which it's funny because I wanted him to say something, but at the same time, I didn't want him to say anything at all. So it was like,
Right.
it was almost like, I want it because it would confirm that I'm doing it, you know, I'm getting what I want. But like, yeah. So it was one of those things where had he said it, I would have just been like, yes, instead of like, maybe I should consider the fact that I'm literally starving myself to death, you know, like, But yeah, I was just so in my head, everything.
And so how did the perception of beauty and self-worth impact your daily life and relationships, especially with Colin, because Colin's away, so it's easy to hide it.
Yeah.
But you still are interacting with other people.
Yeah.
And they're also surely noticing changes in you and especially people close to you.
Yeah.
Not every, body on the campus, of course, but how did you move through relationship with people trying to hide that?
It was difficult. It was definitely one of those things where I stopped investing a lot into relationships because I didn't have the energy, because all of my energy was focused on myself. So unless you were like family or my roommate or, like a really close friend, I really didn't pursue relationships. So in that sense, being, someone who had very few friends growing up, that actually worked out for me, once I got into college, because I didn't really care about relationships as much as I cared that anyone who saw me, be it someone who knew me or a stranger, would look at me and be like, oh man, I wish I was as skinny as her.
Right.
And it wasn't even like, I didn't even care about being pretty anymore at a certain point. I just cared about looking thin.
Your body just being the way you thought it should be.
Literally, that's all I cared about. And so it was like, what a miserable existence, first of all. I wanted to be seen desperately, but I was making myself invisible. Like, just the irony of that, like there was, my personality was dying out. Like I was becoming more like in a shell again, just because I didn't have the energy, because I'm not eating food, like your literal energy source. But I would go to class. I would come back to my apartment room, wherever we were staying that year, and do my homework and then read books. But I didn't really pursue, I wasn't involved in my college ministry at the time. I'd go home on the weekends and hang out with my family, just, so I didn't have to hang out with friends on campus and have energy and stuff like that. I could just chill at home. Plus, I loved my family, so I wanted to go home.
Yeah, you never really...
Did your family notice?
Oh, yeah. They did. But again, they didn't know what to say or how to say it, aside from you should eat more, you're looking really thin. And I would eat enough on the weekends when I was home. I would eat enough that it wasn't it was enough to be okay. Well, she is eating
to keep them off your back.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and she would sleep there was an extra room in the basement. So she would sleep in the basement. So everybody would go to sleep and she would go down there and she'd work out for 3 hours.
Yeah.
From midnight till 3 a.m. She'd be working
trying to
out.
burn all that food off.
Literally.
And then she'd sleep, and she's never been one who needs a lot of sleep. So she'd be able to go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and then pop awake at 8 or 9 when everybody else is up and be like, I had a full night of sleep. And
and nobody knew the difference.
Right, because they couldn't hear her working out. She's in the basement and all that. So
right.
Yeah. Oh, and I made sure people couldn't hear me working out. I was as quiet as I could be.
But really, I mean, you're struggling with a full-fledged eating disorder.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not be what people typically think when they think of eating disorder, like the throwing up and going eating and then going and throwing up. I mean, you just chose to do it a different way.
Exactly.
But it's full-blown.
It is, yeah. And I was I had part-time jobs and stuff like that during that time because my school had a co-op system, which is why I was in a 5-year program, because we'd be every other quarter, we'd be going to work. And my lunch breaks at work, I would quote unquote pack a lunch. My mom would see me packing a lunch, but either I wouldn't eat it or I would throw it away.
Or you'd give it to somebody at
or
work.
I'd give it to someone or whatever. And I would just spend my lunch break walking. So I wouldn't even engage with people in the office, stuff like that. I wouldn't build a relationship that would mean that you would do things that you would do with friends, go to coffee, go to lunch, go to dinner. You do that with people you're in relationships with, whether it be friends or family. So the less relationships I had in my life, the less chance of me having to do anything with anyone that involved food. So if people would suggest, you want to go to lunch? I'm well, let's just go to the park and hang out. Or
can we walk a few laps?
Exactly.
You want to go walk? Did you bring your tennis shoes today?
I did suggest that a couple times. Hey, I was thinking about going for a walk. You want to join me? Anything and everything that had to do with food, I tried to very much avoid by the end of it. And that did end up with me starting to avoid relationships. So I did start kind of slowly cutting people out of my life, and Colin was one of them. I did break up with him briefly my
sophomore year.
Your sophomore year, my junior year. Pre-junior, that's right. Because pre-junior year was the worst. That was the lowest of the low, where literally I would look in the mirror and burst into tears because like it was just like everything I've been doing these past 3 years, nothing is working, and I'm more miserable now, thinner than I was before, which is what I thought I wanted, but I'm more miserable now than I've ever been before. And like suicide wasn't an option for me. Like it was never on the table, but it was one of those things where I was like, if I could just be free of my physical body, like that's what I want desperately more than anything right now. Because like the more I tried to control my body, the less out of control my mind was. Like just because nothing worked the way I wanted it to. And even if it was technically working the way I wanted it to, I could not physically see that.
Yeah.
So what I always saw was failure. You know, you're so fat, you're so ugly, it's worthless. Nothing you're doing is working. So you might as well just give it up, you know? So that's kind of where I was at.
So so clearly it's building. Mm-hmm. You're still away though. I mean, not your fault, clearly. But so you get broke up with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At that, I mean, was it like a moment where you're like, wait, time out?
Yeah.
Well, this is a fascinating like intersection of both of our lives. Mm-hmm. Not just like growing up in maturity for maturity's sake, but also in our spiritual lives. Like this was an interesting crux moment because
I wasn't really pursuing the Lord at this point either, because had I been pursuing the Lord, I would have been convicted by my choices because I was choosing myself over God 24/7, right?
Yeah, but you're so fully into a disorder that I'm sure there was nothing in your world but what you had to maintain for like grades and things, and then keeping that feeling
maintaining
of,
myself, basically.
You.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was so self-focused. Like nothing in my day, everything was filtered through the lens of, will this make me gain weight? Will I look good if I put this on? You know, just me, my physical body. It was like only thing that I filtered everything through. Mm-hmm. Just miserable. That's such a miserable way to attempt to live.
Right. Yeah. But in the moment, you don't realize that.
No.
Because you're so consumed.
No. In my mind, it was the only way to live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I was in Savannah and I wasn't pursuing the Lord either at that point. Still a believer, but like I wasn't pursuing the Lord. But I mean, we know as believers, like, hey, if you're not moving forward, like, you're
it's really key to mention here that like now you're both out of your parents' house, so that whole got to be at church. And like when you're younger, they're taking you.
Yes.
But then you get older, and I don't know about you guys, but like for myself, I felt the freedom of you can't make me do that all the time anymore. It wasn't that I didn't want to go to church. It was that if I had gone out the Saturday night before and maybe possibly stayed out till 3 or 4 in the morning, I was not going to just jump out of the bed to go to church.
Right.
Looking and feeling the way I
like crap.
did. You know, it wasn't going to be my first option. And I didn't have to because guess where I didn't live anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a natural progression for a lot of people. I'm not saying it's right or everybody should choose that, but it does happen more that you get older, you're out of that routine of your parents and how they take you. And then you start making different choices for the life that you think in the moment is fitting for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had at that point, my friend group was like from freshman year, my roommate, and I still wanted to do some athletic something at SCAD. And so I was like, oh, I'll do intramural Frisbee because I grew up playing ultimate Frisbee. I love Frisbee. And so I was like, I'm going to go do that. And played one intramural game, and it was a joke. And so, but I played against a team that had a bunch of like upperclassmen from SCAD, and they're like, hey, we play on a Savannah team, not a school team, like not affiliated with SCAD, but we're a bunch of SCAD students that play in a league here in Savannah. And so I was like, oh, so I joined that team. And so they became my friends, was this Frisbee team. I had no idea what the culture of Frisbee is in college until I was there. And that was kind of a bit of a shock. Because I really was like, grew up just kind of like, I was the naive little Christian kid.
Right.
And so like, that was, that's what I did. But like the party culture that surrounds Frisbee was something I was not, it was like out of my depth. So I had already decided I wasn't going to go do any of those things. I wasn't going to go party with my Frisbee friends, but I felt so like alone in the times that they would all go do stuff. Yeah. I wouldn't. And then that sophomore year, it got even more intense because we were now living off campus technically, part of SCAD housing, but it was like an apartment style, and other guys on the team had an apartment, so they were completely off campus, funded by their parents. Like,
Yeah.
So they were all different ages. So it's like, yes, alcohol there aplenty, weed there aplenty.
Yeah, whatever you want at your disposal.
And they had their own little house in the city that they could all do that. And so my roommate, we moved in, and he went over there, and he stayed, and there was like already a huge rift forming between us. He stayed there for 2.5 weeks when the quarter started. I was alone by myself. No idea when he was coming home. No idea if he would come back. He would come back, but when he would come back, he'd either be very drunk or he'd be very high. And then he would leave before I even get to say anything to him. So I was like in this very weird spot. I was like lost my entire friend group, and I missed Adrienne, and I was like, she's the only person that like I have left aside from my family. And then slowly but surely, like, she's also withdrawing, and so like I can tell that there's a rift happening, and like I'm desperately clinging on to it. And when we had that conversation where she was like, I think that we need to take a break, like that ruined me, because I'm like, I am now really alone. Yeah. Because like I'm down in Savannah, Georgia, in this apartment by myself. I have no friends. I have no girlfriend anymore. And I'm 12 hours away from.
Fly down to Savannah with his family for a
Halloween
weekend,
or
something like that, and see him and hang out with his family. But I was so unbelievably miserable, and I was terrified that if I did, I was going to have to spend all weekend figuring out how to stay away from food. And that the thought of it just so exhausted me that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be in a relationship anymore. Like, I can't. It's just like I don't have enough. Like, I hated myself at that point. Like, I don't have any love in me. So I certainly don't have enough energy for anyone else. And so like I had called him, and I like had to refund his parents and everything. Like, I felt horrible, but I was like,
so what did you tell him? Because clearly you didn't say, hey, I have this eating disorder, and it's really ruining my life. And so I'm going to let it go ahead and trash the rest of it. We're done. Goodbye.
Literally.
Yeah. Like, so what did you say?
I actually used God as an excuse. Like, I knew both of us were not pursuing the Lord. So I knew that, right? Like,
it's a weird instance of her using an excuse, but like the Lord actually having truth.
Literally. Yeah. I was like, I need to pursue, like, I know you're not pursuing your faith. I'm not pursuing mine. And I need to spend time doing that. And I'm like, we need to get our personal walks with the Lord right, or something like that.
I think it was like the Christianese version of like, I need to work on myself.
Yeah. Literally. It's not you, it's me. Yeah. Like, that's exactly what it was. But it was like such an excuse. And it was such a lie too, because I wasn't going to do any of that. I was just too tired fighting my own demons to worry about like
being called.
Yeah.
Like the work behind. I mean, I think it's anything when you're sinning or you're doing something that's is not right. It takes
mentally
work.
It does.
It's physically exhausting.
It's physically, mentally, because you have to hide it. You have to pretend everything's fine.
You got to have a story for everything,
an excuse for everything. And so I was just like, I can't do it anymore. I can't. I need one less person in my life to have to be perfect for.
That's so you just alienated everybody.
Yeah.
So that you could just live in misery.
Literally.
Yeah.
How ironic is that? Like, I'm absolutely miserable. Let's make myself more miserable.
And at the same time, it is crazy because you weren't a part of that, but now you're alienated from everybody. Yep. And so you're both living in complete misery for different reasons, unknowing at the same time.
Yeah. Which is funny because that's where the Lord, there is truth in what she said, because like I absolutely needed to work on my relationship with the Lord. And like that was the big fundamental thing of like, why am I feeling so alone and isolated? And it's like, well, like you're not pursuing a relationship with the Lord at all. So so of course you're stagnant and you're feeling lonely for this. But still to this day, that conversation, I was working on a project, and worst grade I ever got in college.
Great. Thanks, Adrienne.
So sorry.
Which ironically was a lettering project, and I love hand lettering stuff, like my notes for church. So I don't draw and everything. I do like pseudo calligraphy, and that's how I do my notes. So it's ironic that was the thing that I got the worst grade on, but it's one thing I actually really love doing.
Yeah.
So at this point, everything's done. He's gone. He's dealing with his own stuff. Who knows what he's doing, where he's at. he's living life, but you are still suffering in the sense of it's still not going to be enough to fix it.
Yeah.
You can get rid of everybody you want to.
I can cut it out as much out as I want, food, family, friends.
Yeah, but you're still sitting in the same
still sucks.
boat. So is this the point where you mentioned in your notes that you said there was like a crossroad?
Yes. Yeah. So literally the next day, I had no identity by that point. My identity was, how do I look in the mirror today? That was basically my identity. And I was at the gym, as I usually was.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we all shocked?
No. So I was at the gym and I was putting everything in the locker, preparing to go work out for another 2.5, 3 hours. And I was freaking out in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, you don't have a boyfriend anymore. Like, we'd been dating for almost 3.5 years at that point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, you don't have a boyfriend. That was probably a really big mistake. You should probably call him up and say you're sorry. And like, I was
The realization kicked in.
yeah, I was starting to freak out about like, what did you do? What did you just do? Like, and so I distinctly remember stopping at that point, kind of staring at these tan metal lockers with my purple lock. And I remember like, I felt like the Lord was asking me, Adrienne, for real? Like, where is your identity? Are you Adrienne, Colin's girlfriend? Are you Adrienne, the girl with the perfect body? Are you Adrienne this, Adrienne that? Or are you Adrienne, the daughter of the king? Like, that's your choice. You have all of these things that you've been chasing, which, by the way, has made you utterly miserable. Or you have me. And like everything that you grew up knowing and learning and being taught, it's either you or me. That's your choice. And I was like, well, it was that that moment of clarity. Like, I am utterly miserable. Like, I've been choosing me and I am truly utterly miserable. Maybe I should try God this time. So it was like literally the excuse that I had just given him 24 hours before. And it was like, God used that to convict me. And it wasn't like an immediate switch, right? It was a very slow process that even continued into our marriage, early marriage years. Mm-hmm. So it was a very slow healing process. But
well, hold on, because we're skipping some things. So you make that, because let's just be clear here, with any addiction, with even any disorder, with anything, it is not, with Jesus in your life or not, it is not. And I guess I have heard instances where people put something down and it was over. Mm-hmm. I believe that can very much happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that's what normally happens. Right. So I want to make sure I say that, because there will be people that be like, what happened for me? And hey, you know what? I think that's great. But some of us have to suffer, I think, so that we remember not to do it again.
100%.
Like, God's got a little more teaching and growth to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But so you have that pivotal moment, because that's a huge moment. Clearly you're still going to struggle through it a little more, because it don't just end overnight. But as far as relationship, especially talking over here with Colin, did you immediately go back and try to repair that? Or and did you tell him? Like, were you honest? Yeah. Oh, see, this is where it gets good. Okay. Yeah. So let's hear it, Adrienne. Give it to us.
Yeah. Let me see. So literally the reason we started talking, and it was almost exactly a week later, and instead of texting him like I'd been, like we'd been texting for years, calling, Skyping, all the things. Instead of doing that, I messaged him on Facebook, because it felt like a little bit more like I'm like, I know I broke your heart. I'm so sorry. Like, nasty ex-girlfriend, like, how dare you come at, like, I was like, maybe this is more of a soft entry type of, like,
did it feel more safe than being so direct?
It did, yeah, for some weird reason. But it was just like, that was the way I chose to contact him. But the reason I chose to contact him was because I needed to refund his parents that plane ticket money. And so it was like a bit of an excuse, but at the same time, it did allow me to start talking to him again. But I was terrified that he was going to be so upset with me. But it was literally a week later. We hadn't talked for a full week, and that was really weird, because we would talk 24/7 for 3.5 years. So it was a full week of not hearing from him, which was weird. And I messaged him. I was like, hey, can I get your parents' address? I need to send them like $200 or whatever for this plane ticket. And I was like, oh, so nervous to send that message. And I sent it, and that opened like just a floodgate. We just started talking. Like, he started talking about his struggles, like being alone and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was slow, but like by the end of the day, we'd sent multiple messages back and forth. And I started actually being honest finally with, like, I'm struggling with my body image. Like, I didn't call it anorexia for the longest time. Like, I didn't even really understand what it was. I just knew that I hated my body, but we started talking and we started messaging, and we messaged on Facebook for like another week or so, like before we started texting again. It was like that weird bridge. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like at one point in time, we were like, do you think it's okay if we text again?
Yeah. Like,
Can we, is that acceptable?
yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I even literally asked him, like, was it you that asked me or I asked you? I said something about it's really nice to talk to you again or something like that. And you were like, yes, oh my gosh. Like I really wanted to, but I was like nervous. So
Yeah.
it was literally only a week, but to us, it felt like a year that we hadn't talked. And all of a sudden we're finally being honest with one another about
Which is huge.
Yeah.
So how did, of course I'm going to ask this question. So she makes the step to ask for the address of money, but then she tells you, like, in that moment, what did you think? Because you've been completely, she has snowballed everybody, including somebody she's been with for 3 years. Like, what was your next time? Clearly you had to be putting some pieces together at this point.
Yeah. I mean, once she finally said that, I was like, it all makes sense. Like, okay.
Were you mad at her? Were you a little mad at her? I gotta know. Were you mad at her? Or are you just so sweet that you couldn't be mad at her?
Honestly, I was so happy to hear from her. Like,
is.
I think it was like part of me would be like, well, you kind of want to be mad, but I couldn't because I'm like, she's dealing with something that is rough. And like, I grew up as like a chunkier kid. And so I dealt with body image a lot too, because all of my friends were like thin, athletic dudes. And I was like the chunky lineman dude. And so, that's why Adrienne was my first girlfriend. I was like, holy cow, I got a girlfriend. Because all my friends, like, they would have girlfriends and it'd be no big deal. And not only would they have girlfriends, they'd have girlfriends that were the girls that I had crushes on. And they were like, hey, is it cool if I ask her out? I know you're crushing on her. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's fine. She's not going to go for me. So I had that mentality, but also having dealt with like that body image too, because it's like, I didn't always want to be the fat kid.
Right.
And so whenever she said that, I'm like, I get that. Like, I get it. Because, I mean, I know when I went to SCAD, I was like, I want to play Frisbee, and I'm going to, like, work out at the gym a bunch. I'm going to be playing Frisbee a bunch, so I'm going to lose some weight. And I did. Admittedly, I lost some weight, and I was in pretty good shape, as good as my knees would allow me to be. But I got it. Like, I understood. And
So there was like a soft place almost that you couldn't even have known
Right.
that he went.
Yeah. But he is genuinely a nice guy too. Like there is also part of that. He won't say that, but like that's one trait of his that I had always admired. Like I'm like ready to jump down your throat, or like I'm the oldest of 5, right? So I'm like bossy, rawr.
You're on go.
Right. And he's laid back, chill, and like he can get anyone to tell them their life stories. Like the older ladies at the grocery store, they just love talking. Like he's got a nice face. Like it's just like, this is a nice kid, like,
Let us tell you everything about us.
literally. So that he is nice. He won't say that, but
So then together, so I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong. So because you still have like you're probably almost done with school and you got more time. So was this kind of
2 more years.
So now it's out in the open, and you couldn't have stopped that quick. So was this? Were you able to hold her more accountable, or were you, or just was walking through that? How did you get? Even getting married, because I can imagine that's almost a trigger, right? A wedding dress, a beautiful day.
Oh, it was.
yeah,
It was a rough day, a little bit. Like there were definitely some, like, I don't want to say like full on relapse, but there was a lot of mental things that I had to work through because I'd built those mental pathways for years. And when you have that mental track in your head, like it's one of those things where it's like one little thing will send you right back down that same track. You've built these pathways. So literally we started talking a ton, talking more, like actually starting to pursue the Lord. I got a little bit more involved in my campus ministry. He was finding better friends, like all this kind of stuff.
And we were talking about like scripture. We were actually talking about what we were diving
what
into.
God
like,
is,
we were
what we felt like God
the
was
Lord
telling
now.
us.
So it was a
Yeah.
huge shift here.
It was.
Even from the past 3 years.
Yes. Yeah. And it was just like, and that's all God. That's all the Holy Spirit pursuing us when we were not choosing to pursue him. It had nothing to do with us. But it was just one of those things where we both realized we need that in our lives. We have to have it. Like we know growing up and
That
all the things that
foundation.
we've learned that's the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And so we realized we were both pursuing our own things and being more and more miserable in college. That, Colin's losing friends, I'm losing myself basically. And so we realized all right, Lord, we're going to try it your way. As immature as we were in our faith and as little as we didn't know, we did know we needed him. And so we were choosing to pursue him both in our relationship. We made sure that God was a topic of conversation. And then also just in our own individual states where we were going to college.
Right.
But we were talking, and people were like, "Oh, are you guys back together? You back together?" I'm like, "No." And we just weren't telling each other we loved each other. But that's like all. Or no, we weren't even at that point where we were just telling each other we liked each other, but we weren't like actually saying that. So like in our minds, we were still broken up, even though like all of our actions said otherwise. And he came home for Christmas break, and we basically hung out like every single day, just talking. But then we were like snuggling on the couch and stuff like that. And I remember going home one night, and my dad was like, "All right, be honest with me. Are you back with him?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Did you hold hands?" I was like, "Yes." He goes, "Did you cuddle?" And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "Okay, so you're back together." I was like, "No, we're not. We're not telling each other we like each other." Like all these things. And I was just like, yeah. And we ended up getting back together several months after that. Like we were just like, okay, yes, let's do this, but let's do this for real.
Right.
Like
That was
with the marriage in mind.
Yeah. That was like the
And-
adult conversation of
Yeah.
like, are we together because like we've just been together because we were
Or are
high
we
school
going
sweethearts?
somewhere?
Yeah. Or is there a destination with this?
Yeah.
Right.
But it was one of those things. It was kind of a confirmation sorts in a way too, because like, we'd been together for so long. We, immature relationship is maturing, but it was also one of those things like people were like, well, how do you know it's him kind of thing? Or like, are you sure like it was just a high school relationship that you just were comfortable in. So you stayed in it. Right. So that was kind of like our crisis initially to be like, no, I choose you. You're the one, like, so we're going to see if we can make this work throughout the rest of college, and we're dating with marriage in mind, so that was kind of the shift from high school lovey-dovey to we're serious about
this
our
is
future.
real. But then during the same time, so you get back together, of course you got to go back to school. You're finishing up or whatever the different places were, but you get a roommate that is struggling.
She's she'd been my roommate since freshman year, and we kind of fed off of each other without even realizing it. We both had body image issues, and we were both feeding off of each other. And so I chose to be honest with her about my struggles. So I was like, "Allison, I'm really struggling. I've struggled with eating and all this other kind of stuff." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, me too." And I was like, "What?" Almost like, because I would see how thin she was, and I'd be jealous, and I'd be like,
every now you got to get that thin.
exactly. And so, whatever she ate, I would eat. If she didn't eat, I didn't. We just fed off each other without even ever saying a word. It was just one of those things. So we broke down. We were super honest with each other, and God was so gracious in that sense to provide us with each other. And we're still good friends to this day, where we chose every single morning to do a little Devo together. So that was such a great time, and so good to hold us both accountable to getting better, making better decisions. We'd still go to the gym and we'd still eat, but we were we would eat together. We would make our way of healing was allowing ourselves to eat again, but it was crazy healthy food. So it was the
She's
weird
eating celery,
healthy stuff.
a little
Literally.
more lettuce and carrots.
Exactly.
Oh, the health food.
But
Oh
you're
my
still,
gosh.
but both of you were still afraid of gaining weight.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that was definitely that.
So it's still there.
That was definitely still there, but it was that slow understanding of, okay, we do need to fuel our bodies, but we're only going to fuel our bodies with super lean, super low calorie stuff, but we are going to eat,
Right.
So it was that slow process of allowing stuff back in. And
is this the time when your family found out, or did they find out around the same?
yeah, I was honest with them that, I struggle, and I never really knew how to, it wasn't one of those things where I don't think I sat down and guys, I have anorexia, it was just kind of one of those things where it's yeah, I'm struggling, and yeah, I don't want to eat that, but I'll eat this, so it was kind of
But now your circle's growing again, so
Yes.
now more people
letting
know,
people in, and
more people are
choosing
checking.
to be honest.
I'm sure
Yes.
they're I'm sure Colin too's they want to go, "Hey, did you eat today?"
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, definitely I was. And when we were together, I was very much okay, what are you eating? Okay, good, you're eating. Okay.
Yeah.
And I imagine that was hard because
It was.
you just went from closing everybody out.
Yeah.
Now you're letting them in, and they're all up in your business.
Yeah. it was difficult.
They're all up in your soup.
Yeah, literally.
They're the alphabet in your soup.
Literally. But I knew that I had to do that. Like, that was one of the things that, like, I was convicted about, was just accountability. Like, I knew if I didn't, because that's exactly how I'd been able to get away with it for so long, because I didn't say anything and I put on a good show. So, like, I knew that I had to be honest with the people around me so that they could hold me accountable, because otherwise I could get away with it.
Yeah.
So while
you were pretty good at doing that.
Yeah. While it sucked to like know that I was being watched, at the same time, it was also a bit of a relief, because like, it was like, okay, like I know that people are paying attention to what I'm doing. So make good choices or make better choices at least. So
Well, you couldn't get away with it so easily anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
They were going to call you on it.
Right. So,
And then in the midst of all this deal, you get a proposal.
which was later than I wanted it.
Oh,
so I
man.
was mad at him all summer.
That's a story in and of itself.
Oh, that's funny. So Miss Perfection's over here still trying to even get you to nail it down the way she wanted you to nail it down.
Of course.
Yeah, but the reason it took so long is because she has a metal allergy, and so she can't wear like 24 karat, or she can't wear your
I can't
typical
wear most metals.
Right.
This is palladium.
Therefore, yeah, I had to figure out
How to get this chick a
how do I
ring?
get her a hyperallergenic ring. First of all, so where do you get that? How do you find that out? And and fortunately, my parents had moved up to Canton, Ohio by this time. So this summer that I was planning on proposing to her, we found a jeweler that did custom jewelry, and I was like, great, let's go just do a consult. And we did. And I went with my brother and my sister. My brother is a metallurgical engineer. He knows metals.
Yeah.
Perfect.
My sister knows jewelry, so she knew diamonds, and
Man, you had a team.
And I knew what I wanted. I knew what design. So I actually I looked at their supplies, and then I just drew what I wanted, and I was like, I want this design, and
That drawing thing just keeps coming back around and
It
back
does.
It's
around.
hanging in our
Actually,
bedroom.
yeah.
Oh,
They gave
that.
they gave us the designs, but they figured it out, and so we're like, sweet. But it had to go through because I was ready right out of school. I was ready to get this ring. I was like, all right, I'm aiming to propose to her on her family vacation in Tennessee on the lake because she loves that place, and I want to make it romantic and do all like the thing
In front of my family.
in front of her family. Do
And that's
the
what I was
whole-
expecting.
Yeah, and so they're like, okay, well, we can do this, but we have to get this person to do the CAD designs. They're down in Cincinnati, but then they got to do this specialty wax molding with the metallurgist who's up in Cleveland, and then that's got to go back down to this place, and then to Akron, and then they can set the diamond. And so they're like, we'll have it to
So
you.
it's a process.
Yeah, they're like, we'll have it to you by August.
And I did not appreciate the process.
Right, right. And this is the beginning of June. They're like, we'll have it to you middle of August. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? And this is like a month out from her family vacation. So I had to wait all summer for this ring.
And I was getting so mad because I literally sat him down and I was like, are you going to propose to me? Because like, I thought this was like what we were going to do. I thought we were going to get like, I literally
And you're
read
like,
him.
God, could she just stop?
Yeah.
I literally read him the riot act and I do feel bad about that. But like,
the drive back home from Knoxville, because we were going from the lake back to her family's house, and then I was going to stay there and then go back up to Canton to go to my parents. We were riding in the car together, and she was giving me the cold shoulder, and she was being real snippy with me, and she like said that like, I got to be honest, I'm really disappointed. I was expecting, and so I'm usually not like the confrontational, blunt person. I'm much more now than I was back then. But I was like, okay, here's the deal. There are things that are happening behind the scenes, and I want to tell you, but I can't tell you right now. So
was just
I'm
like-
disappointed too, but you're going to have to be patient and just trust me.
patience,
It's not her thing, man.
Yeah.
Not her thing.
not one of the spiritual gifts that the Lord's blessed me with.
But finally, you get a proposal.
Literally on my way back to school. I was staying
Like the day
staying with
before.
them, overnight so I could start my drive back to school for my senior year.
And I
that's when
knew,
proposed to her.
I knew he was going to propose, but like my dad had planned a like a boating trip up to Caesar's Creek for the evening, and I was like, well, he didn't do it when I wanted it, so I know he's going to propose, but I'm going to make him wait one more night.
Yeah.
I was so
I
petty
asked her, I was
by
like,
that
can we
point.
go to dinner on Friday night? Like, let's go to,
I was
there was
like,
a place
no,
we'd like to go.
Dad wants to go to the lake. We can go Saturday night.
So that ring was sitting in
You're
my
wrong
car.
for that.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Sitting in my car
I'm
waiting
so
to be
petty.
used. And I'm sitting in the house like,
Yeah.
her ring's in the car.
It's like burning a hole in the seat of my car under the floorboard. It's going to go in the mat to the metal of the car.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. But then, so how long were you proposed? I mean, how long were you engaged?
About a year.
Yeah,
Because
not
it was
even
that
a full
school
year.
year.
Yeah.
So
And still,
basically,
you're still going through, you're still on the healing kind of, you're still trying to figure all that out and get back.
Yep.
Okay. And I know it sounds like rushy, like, why are you rushing all of a sudden? But here's the deal. So y'all,
a little overtime.
no, so we're going to do another episode because if you think, well, this story. Okay. No, Colin has to share too. Because we have a whole nother place to go with Colin. So instead of like just going on and on and on, and we're gonna shut it down for this week, and then we're gonna pick it back up next with our next episode, and we're gonna let you pick it up at marriage. And then Colin, I'm sorry, but you're going in.
Oh boy.
Colin's going in because we're gonna get into the marriage part and where you still were, and then we're gonna get you guys married, and then we're gonna talk about the whole new can of worms that we're about to dive off into. So are you guys good with that?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Okay, so listen, I'm gonna thank you guys for being here, but it doesn't end here. Sorry, you're gonna have to go for a round two. It happens sometimes, man. So, but thank you for coming, and Adrienne, for it's hard for a lot of people to talk about this, and you certainly know what it's like to be pretty much trapped in it, caged in it. So my hope is that that if we have listeners out there who are struggling with this, that they are hearing that they're not alone, that this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited for them to come back next week and hear about how you start moving out of that, even though you move into something else.
Yep.
But to know that there's hope, that your story doesn't have to end there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to end there. And there are resources, and there are resources out there. And as I tell you guys every week, you can always reach out to www.steppingforwardfwd.org. If you're looking for resources in your area, you don't have to live in Texas. You can live anywhere. It's easy for us to help you find those resources, to connect you with help, or to just guide you in the right direction. So that will be in the descriptive box of this week's episode. But we're just going to wrap it up, and we're going to come back. So you have to come back next week to hear the rest of the story. But again, thank you, Adrienne and Colin, for just being so honest. Because a lot of people like to hide that stuff. They don't want people to know that it wasn't always perfect, or that they didn't make the right choices. But I appreciate you being just so forth with, here's what it was.
Yeah.
And here's how we managed through it. Because I think, it does give hope to other people who can't find their voice in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there. You couldn't find your voice in it.
Yeah.
But God worked and did what He does, and He put people in your life, and He put people in your life that actually put you two in the same kind of predicament at the same time.
Yeah.
So that you would have sympathy for each other. And then blossom into all of that. Okay. All right, guys. As always, thank you so much for listening. And make sure you come back next week so that you can hear the rest of this story. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Southern Soul Chats. We hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and valuable insights to carry with you through your week. We invite you to subscribe to Southern Soul Chats so that you never miss an episode. We are a branch of Stepping Forward Ministries, a 501c3 Christian nonprofit, and we kindly ask for you to consider making a donation today. Your contribution will play a vital role in sustaining the podcast and allowing us to continue sharing these impactful stories of faith. As you leave today, remember your story is a part of a bigger narrative, and your faith has power to guide your path. Keep stepping forward with hope, trust, and assurance that you're never alone. This is Dr. Miranda Ferguson. We hope you have a great week and keep stepping forward.